Very nice. So get this. We're about to dive into something pretty major. Could be the biggest retail worker strike in U.S. history.
Wow.
And it's at Costco.
Costco. Really?
Yeah, Costco, those bulk buy places we all love. Apparently 18,000 Teamsters at 56 Costco stores across 6 states, they're voting on whether to strike.
Huh. That's interesting because Costco has a reputation for treating their employees well, compared to other big retailers anyway. I mean, their wages and benefits are usually above average, so this is kind of surprising.
Yeah, it is for sure. So we've got your research and some news articles here, and we really want to go deeper than the headlines, like what's really going on here and what does it mean for us as shoppers?
Right, we'll get into what the Teamsters are asking for and how Costco's responding, and then I think it'd be good to zoom out and look at the bigger picture,
Yeah.
labor relations in America, specifically in retail.
Okay, so let's start with the Teamsters. What are they actually asking for? I know it's not just about wages, right?
Right, wages are a factor for sure, but they're also pushing for improvements to seniority pay or paid family leave, bereavement policies, and sick time.
Okay.
And this is interesting. They're also raising concerns about surveillance in the workplace.
The demand for safeguards against surveillance now. That's interesting. Can you talk a bit more about that? Like, what kind of surveillance are they talking about? What does this tell us about how technology is changing the retail workplace?
Well, the sources we have don't get into specifics about the types of surveillance, but it does indicate a potential problem, between worker privacy and the increasing use of data and monitoring in retail. I mean, it suggests that Costco might be using technology to monitor employee performance or behavior in a way that the union just finds intrusive.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It'll be interesting to see if that becomes like a main point during negotiations. So how's Costco responding to all these demands?
Well, they've said that they plan to stay open. Even if there is a strike, they'll use management and non-union staff. But here's the thing. Costco CEOs actually sent a letter directly to their employees, and they took responsibility for the initial unionization vote that happened at their Roanoke, Virginia store.
Really? That's a pretty unique approach. Why do you think they did that? Are they trying to control the narrative or is it something else?
It's definitely different from what most companies would do. By acknowledging that the unionization vote reflects a failure on their part, Costco's trying to address employee concerns head-on and show that they're willing to listen. It could be part of a strategy to keep a good public image and minimize any disruptions to their business.
Smart. It makes them look more open to employee feedback, which is good for their brand image. But are they actually giving in to the union demands?
Not really. I mean, Costco recently announced wage increases for all their employees, even the ones not in the union. So it makes you wonder, is this really about addressing pay concerns, or is it a way to discourage further unionization by making the union seem less necessary?
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword for sure. It might appease some employees, but it could weaken the union's position too. But what if the strike actually happens? How disruptive could it really be?
Well, a walkout of 18,000 workers would definitely disrupt things, especially at those 56 stores where the vote is happening. And the Teamsters have also talked about setting up picket lines at other Costco locations, even the ones that aren't unionized, just to expand the impact of the strike.
Wow, they're not messing around. But realistically, how much pressure can this put on Costco? They're huge.
Well, the strike initially only affects like 8% of Costco's stores. But it's the ripple effect that could have a bigger impact. If the Teamsters succeed, it could embolden workers at other Costco locations and maybe even inspire similar action at other big retailers like Walmart or Target.
So this potential strike is tapping into something bigger, this worker activism we're seeing everywhere. If they're successful, could this embolden workers in other retail giants like Walmart or Target?
Absolutely. I mean, we're seeing this resurgence in labor organizing and activism. It's being driven by things like wage stagnation, income inequality, and a growing awareness of worker rights. If the Teamsters win at Costco, it could energize labor movements in retail and beyond.
Makes sense. It'll be interesting to see how Costco responds and what kind of precedent this sets for the whole industry. But there's another layer to the story too, right? There's a bit of a political angle.
Yeah, there is. There's an unusual political dynamic here.
Mm-hmm.
The Teamsters president actually has a pretty close personal relationship with former President Trump.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. How could that relationship play into this whole thing? Could Trump actually get involved?
It's tough to say for sure, but Trump hasn't publicly commented on the potential strike yet. But if he did get involved, it could turn this labor dispute into a political battleground, especially considering Costco's very vocal commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, all those things Trump often targeted during his time in politics.
So we've got this potentially explosive mix, a union leader who is friendly with Trump, and a company openly embracing DEI. What kind of impact could that have on the strike and how it all plays out?
Well, even if Trump just makes public statements or endorsements, it could energize his base and bring national attention to the strike. This could pressure Costco to settle in a way that favors the Teamsters because they probably don't want to get caught up in a political controversy.
Yeah, so it seems like this strike could have implications that go way beyond Costco and its
Oh,
workers.
for sure. We're talking about potential ripple effects that could impact the entire retail sector, labor relations across the country, even the political landscape. It's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll explore the potential impact of this strike in more detail. What could it mean for shoppers, for Costco's bottom line, and for the future of worker activism in America? Stay tuned. You won't want to miss this. So before the break, we were talking about how this potential Costco strike could have major implications beyond just the workers and the company.
Right? The ripple effects could be felt by shoppers, other businesses, and even the broader political landscape.
Okay, so let's start with the impact on shoppers. What could people actually expect if these 56 Costco stores go on strike?
Well, Costco has said they plan to stay open using management and non-union staff.
Hmm.
But it's hard to imagine a strike wouldn't lead to at least some disruptions.
Yeah, I mean, even with the best plans in place, shoppers could see longer checkout lines, limited product availability, maybe even temporary store closures.
Right, exactly. And you have to remember, Costco operates on a high-volume, low-margin model, so even small disruptions to their workflow could really hurt their profitability.
And it makes you think, could a strike, even a short one, damage their reputation for efficiency and low prices, which is a big part of the brand?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
A long strike could push shoppers to look for alternatives. Maybe they'll go to Sam's Club or start
Mhm.
shopping online.
So the stakes are high for Costco, for sure. They need to meet worker demands, but also protect their brand image. But what about the bigger picture? How could a successful strike at Costco affect other retailers and workers across the country?
That's where things get really interesting. The retail industry has always been very resistant to unions.
Yeah, we've seen how companies like Walmart and Amazon have fought hard against them.
Exactly. But if the Teamsters are successful at Costco, and remember, Costco is known for treating its employees relatively well, it could show workers at other big retailers that collective bargaining can work even in tough environments.
You know, this reminds me of the recent unionization efforts at Amazon. Do you see any parallels there? And could a win for the Teamsters at Costco create a similar ripple effect in retail?
There are definitely some similarities. Both cases involve workers at these huge, powerful companies who are demanding better pay, better benefits, and better working conditions. And in both cases, the companies have really pushed back against the unions. The success of the Amazon labor union, even though it was on a smaller scale, showed that it is possible to organize workers even in a company as massive and powerful as Amazon.
So a Teamsters victory at Costco could build on that momentum and create this feeling that change is possible even in an industry that's typically been hostile to unions.
Right. It could inspire a new wave of organizing efforts and potentially shift the power dynamic between workers and employers in the retail world.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit and talk about the political side of this again. We were talking before about how the Teamsters president is friendly with former President Trump.
Yes, that adds another layer of complexity to this whole situation.
Do you think there's a real chance that Trump could get involved in this strike if it happens, and how would that play out?
It's definitely possible. I mean, Trump has a history of getting involved in high-profile labor disputes. He often sides with unions as a way to appeal to working-class voters.
Yeah.
He might see this as a chance to push his political agenda and maybe gain some support from union members.
And considering Costco's stance on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which Trump has frequently criticized his involvement, could turn this into a very political event.
Absolutely. It would be this clash of ideologies, with Trump potentially framing the strike as a fight against woke corporations, and Costco defending its commitment to social responsibility.
It's wild to think how this local labor dispute could become this proxy battle in a larger cultural and political war. But let's step back from the political stuff for a second and focus on the potential outcomes of the strike itself.
Okay, let's see what the analysts are saying about how long it might last and the different scenarios that could unfold.
What are the experts saying about how long the strike might go on if it actually happens?
Most analysts seem to think that a strike at Costco wouldn't last for months. They point to the 2019 Stop and Shop strike, which lasted 11 days, as a possible example.
So a short but intense showdown.
Exactly. And as for outcomes, there are a few possibilities. The best case scenario for everyone would be a negotiated settlement before the strike deadline.
Right, a win-win. The Teamsters get some concessions, and Costco avoids a disruptive strike.
But if they can't agree, the strike could happen, and that's where things get less predictable. One possibility is the Teamsters make some gains, but Costco stands firm on its main points, leading to a compromise that doesn't feel like a clear victory for either side.
So kind of a stalemate. What are some other potential outcomes?
Well, another possibility is the strike gains momentum and puts more pressure on Costco than they expected.
Like maybe through consumer boycotts or negative media coverage.
Right. And that kind of public pressure could force Costco to make bigger concessions than they initially planned, just to get the Teamsters back to work and get things running smoothly again.
And that's where the potential for bigger change comes in, right? A successful strike could give workers more power, not just at Costco, but across the whole retail industry.
Exactly. It could set a precedent for other workers to demand better treatment and show that collective action can be a powerful tool to get what they want.
But of course, there's always the wild card of politics. If someone like Trump gets involved, it could totally change the game.
Definitely. His involvement would bring in all these new factors and make it even harder to predict what will happen.
So we've got a range of possibilities, from a quick resolution to a long, drawn-out battle with unpredictable political consequences. It's a complicated situation with a lot going on.
It is. But one thing is clear. The outcome of this strike could have a huge impact on the retail industry and the future of labor relations in America.
It's been a really interesting discussion, and I think it's important for everyone to understand how complex this situation is and what's at stake.
I agree. It reminds us that even in a company like Costco, which is generally seen as a good employer, there can still be tension between workers and management. And that tension reflects larger trends we're seeing across the economy.
Well said. We'll continue our deep dive after a short message. Stay tuned. So we're back. And it's amazing how this one situation at Costco connects to so many bigger trends.
Yeah, even if the strike doesn't happen, the issues that got us here, they're not going away.
It feels like this clash between the old way and the new way of doing business, especially in retail.
Right. The Teamsters' demands show what today's workers want. It's more than just a paycheck. They want better benefits, better working conditions, and more control over their work lives.
And it's happening at Costco, a company that's known for treating its employees pretty well.
Exactly. That's what's so important. If workers at Costco feel like they need a union and might even strike every way, it makes you wonder about the rest of the retail industry, where pay and benefits are often much worse.
So could this be a turning point for all retail workers? Could we see more and more labor activism at places like Walmart, Target, even fast food?
It's possible. We've seen a resurgence in union activity lately, and if the strike at Costco is successful, it could encourage workers in other industries to demand more from their employers.
And public opinion seems to be shifting too. People are more aware of things like wage stagnation, income inequality, and the decline of unions.
You're right. For years, the narrative was that unions are old-fashioned and unnecessary, but now people are starting to see that unions are important for protecting workers' rights and making things fairer economically.
So if this Costco situation is part of a bigger trend, where do you think things are going? Are we entering a new era of labor activism in America?
It's hard to say for sure, but it does feel like things are ready for change. The outcome of this potential strike at Costco could tell us a lot about what's coming next.
So if the Teamsters win, could that spark a wave of organizing efforts in other industries?
It could. It would show workers that it's possible to challenge big corporations and get better treatment. But if the strike fails or they only get small concessions, it might discourage future organizing efforts.
It's a big deal with big consequences. So for our listeners, what should they be watching for as this unfolds? What are the key things?
I think it's important to look beyond just what the Teamsters are asking for right now. This is about more than just pay and benefits. It's about the balance of power between workers and employers in a world where the economy is changing so fast.
That's a really important point.
We also need to think about technology and automation in the workplace. The fact that the Teamsters are worried about surveillance shows how technology is changing jobs and creating new challenges for workers.
It's a reminder that as technology gets more advanced, we have to make sure workers' rights are protected and they have a say in how work changes in the future.
Exactly. And finally, I think we need to pay attention to how the public reacts to this whole thing. Will consumers support the workers or side with Costco? How will politicians react? The conversations people are having about this strike will tell us a lot about where we are as a society when it comes to worker rights and economic justice.
This has been a really eye-opening look at this potential Costco strike. It's clear this story has implications far beyond just one company or one union.
Definitely. It's a story about how work is changing the fight for economic fairness and how workers and businesses are dealing with each other in the 21st century.
Well said. To our listeners, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into this important issue. We hope this conversation has given you some valuable insights and maybe even made you want to learn more about the fight for worker rights and a fairer, more just economy.